Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Lyric Cook and Elizabeth Collins? Their case was the topic of a documentary titled Taken Together, Who Killed Lyric and Elizabeth? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Lyric Cook was born on October 2, 2001, and was raised in Evansdale, Iowa. This small town is about an hour northwest of Cedar Rapids. Her father, Daniel Morrissey, and her mother, Misty Cook, had criminal histories related to drugs. Lyric had a cousin named Elizabeth Collins, who had been born on July 31, 2003, and was raised by her parents Drew and Heather Collins. Lyric's mother, Misty, and Elizabeth's mother, Heather, were sisters. By 2012, the relationship between Lyric's parents, Daniel and Misty, was not going too well. Misty was living with her mother, Wilma. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Friday, July 13, 2012, 10-year-old Lyric was under the care of her grandmother, Wilma, as her mother Misty was at work. Wilma took Lyric to the house where 8-year-old Elizabeth lived with Drew and Heather. This house was located on Broven Boulevard. Sometime around 12 p.m., Lyric and Elizabeth went outside to ride their bicycles. By 1 p.m., they had still not returned. Heather and Wilma drove around the area looking for the girls without success. Concerned about their safety, Heather made her way to the police station and reported the girls missing. This was at 2:42 p.m. The police responded to the area where the girls were last seen and started searching, but there was no sign of them. At 4 p.m., firefighters made a discovery at Myers Lake, which is 1 mile south of Elizabeth's house, right next to Interstate 380. They found the girls' bicycles on a trail near the southeast corner of the lake. Not far from this, Elizabeth's purse was recovered behind a fence. Her phone was in the purse. The fire department started dragging the lake a half hour later, but they did not find anything. An extensive search of the area was conducted by officers and volunteers, but they did not have success either. The police found surveillance video from an auction company not far from Elizabeth's house on Broven Boulevard. It captured the girls riding their bicycles not long after 12 p.m. At 12:23 p.m., a witness spotted them on Broven Boulevard. Another witness spotted them on Gilbert Drive near Myers Lake, sometime between 12:30 and 1 p.m. One witness stated she saw a man with 2 girls. One of the girls appeared to be arguing with the man. There was a white van in the area. In the same general time range, 3 witnesses saw a white SUV parked a few hundred feet from where the girls' bicycles were found. Investigators interviewed Elizabeth's parents, Drew and Heather, and ruled them out as potential suspects. Lyric's parents, Daniel and Misty, did not initially cooperate with the authorities. Daniel was facing serious charges related to methamphetamine and was out on bond when the girls went missing. One day earlier, he had turned down a plea bargain for 30 years in prison. So Daniel had some serious problems on his mind. The police wondered if he caused the girls to go missing to obtain sympathy. Despite having suspicions initially, the police ruled out Daniel and Misty as potential suspects. Eventually, Daniel reached a plea agreement with the state. He was sentenced up to 90 years in prison with a minimum of 30 years. No progress was made on the case involving Lyric and Elizabeth until December 5, 2012, when a grisly discovery was made at the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area. This remote wooded area is about 20 miles north of Evansdale. Hunters came across human remains near a river and notified the police. 5 days later, the remains were identified as belonging to Lyric and Elizabeth. The police said that all the clothing belonging to the girls was found at the disposal site, and the location was far from any parking area. They made other discoveries as well, but they have refused to reveal them to the public because having information only the killer would know could become useful later. About 5 months after the discovery of the girls' remains, another double abduction occurred just over 100 miles west of Evansdale in the town of Dayton, Iowa. On May 20, 2013, at about 4 p.m., 15-year-old Kathleen Shepard and 12-year-old Desi Hughes were walking home after being dropped off by their school bus. They were only about a block from their home when a man in a red Toyota Tundra pickup truck pulled up next to them. He asked them if they wanted to earn money mowing lawns. They told him they needed to ask permission from their parents. The man offered to give them a ride home so they could ask for permission. The girls climbed in the truck with the man. He told them his name was Michael, which was true. His full name was Michael Clunder. Instead of driving the girls home, Michael drove out of town and used a lot of back roads. He told the girls that they could use the phone at his house to call for permission. Eventually, they arrived at a hog farm, which was owned by Michael's father-in-law. Michael took the girls into a hog confinement building and produced a captive bolt pistol, which is a tool used to stun hogs and other animals before slaughtering them. Michael zip-tied the girls' hands behind their back and produced a knife. Not long after this, he grabbed Kathleen and took her away from Desi. After Kathleen said Desi's name, Desi did not hear her say anything else. Presumably, Michael killed Kathleen at this moment. Desi managed to step over her hands, so they were in front of her, grab the captive bolt pistol, and run out of the building. She made it into the woods nearby, where she could see Michael climb into his pickup truck and drive around the area looking for her. She kept running deeper into the woods until she encountered another farm. The workers there notified the police. Michael's identity was uncovered quickly, but the police did not know where he was. Later, he was found at a different farm, hanging by his neck. On June 7, 2013, Kathleen's body was found in a river about 20 miles south of the hog farm. She had died from multiple stab wounds. Michael's crime had many factors in common with the murders of Lyric and Elizabeth. Naturally, people believed that he may have been responsible for that crime as well. In May of 2014, the police announced that Michael was not a suspect in the murders of Lyric and Elizabeth. Despite this determination, many people are not convinced. Now moving to my analysis. Is Michael Blunder the offender who murdered Lyric and Elizabeth? The police have not released any evidence supporting their exclusion of Michael as a suspect, which has made people wonder if the police made the right decision. Before weighing the evidence, let's take a look at Michael's history. In 1989, Michael was sent to prison for just over 2 years for attempted burglary and assault. On December 15, 1991, Michael kidnapped a 21-year-old woman in Mason City, Iowa, by flashing his headlights and getting her to pull over on a highway. After forcing the woman into his vehicle, she waved to an oncoming vehicle for help. Michael responded by pushing the victim out of his vehicle and driving away. The next day, Michael kidnapped 2 3-year-old girls as they were playing outside their babysitter's apartment in Charles City, Iowa. His motive was anger. Michael was mad at one of the girls. She was the daughter of a female acquaintance. He left the girls in a trash bin about an hour away in Northwood, where they were found alive by a county employee a few hours later. One of the girls had sustained minor injuries. Michael received concurrent sentences of 11 years for kidnapping the woman and 30 years for kidnapping the girls. In prison, he completed an 18-month faith-based program. The Department of Corrections did not see any indication that Michael would commit a crime in the future. In February 2011, Michael was released from prison after serving only about half his sentence. About 2 months later, his ex-wife requested a permanent protection order. In May 2013, Michael kidnapped 2 girls, Kathleen and Desi. He murdered one of the girls and almost certainly would have murdered the other if she had not escaped. With Michael's background in mind, let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he murdered Lyric and Elizabeth, starting with the factors supporting this theory. Michael had a history of violence involving female victims. In July 2012, Lyric and Elizabeth were kidnapped and murdered by a perpetrator who has never been identified. In May 2013, Michael kidnapped Kathleen and Desi. There were similarities between these 2 crimes. For example, both crimes occurred in Iowa, just over 100 miles apart. Both cases involved girls in a similar age range and involved one girl who was larger than the other. Elizabeth's purse was found discarded. The backpacks from both Kathleen and Desi were found discarded. Lyric and Elizabeth were found near a river. Kathleen was found in a river. From 1973 to 2013, there have been only 17 double abductions in the United States. Michael was responsible for at least 2 of those, one in 1991 and one in 2013. It's not hard to imagine how he could have also perpetrated the one in 2012. In the 1980s, Michael spent some time in a youth detention facility not far from the Seven Bridges wildlife area. This is the area where the bodies of Lyric and Elizabeth were discovered. He escaped the facility and ran into that area, so he was definitely familiar with it. A former inmate who spent time in prison with Michael said that Michael was in the Evansdale area during the time of the murders. Now moving to the factors contradicting the theory that Michael was the killer. The police believe the killer lived in the Evansdale area. Michael lived in Stratford, 100 miles to the west. The police said that Michael was not a suspect. Even though they won't release information supporting this determination, they have talked about it a little bit. They indicated that cell phone data from Michael's phone indicated that he was at work or at home when Lyric and Elizabeth were kidnapped. I mentioned that a former inmate said that Michael was in the Evansdale area when the murders occurred. Another former inmate said he wasn't. Why would Michael have traveled all the way from Stratford to Evansdale in the hope of finding victims, when there were many towns closer to him? When considering all the evidence, do I think that Michael Clunder was responsible for murdering Lyric and Elizabeth? In my opinion, he was probably not the killer. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. There was a man living somewhere in the Evansdale area who had a troubled history involving increasingly serious offenses. An intense and inappropriate interest in young people plagued him. He was living dangerously and always on the lookout for a chance to satisfy his dark fantasies. On July 13, 2012, the man just happened to stumble across Lyric and Elizabeth when they were out riding their bicycles. He kidnapped them from a trail at Myers Lake using manipulation and/or threats. After driving directly to the Seven Bridges wildlife area, the man killed them. The murders probably occurred within a few hours of the kidnapping. The man probably did not commit the double abduction due to a specific fascination with kidnapping 2 victims at the same time. Rather, this was just a crime of opportunity. Michael Clunder probably wasn't the killer, but he shared many characteristics with him. In Michael's case, the state had a chance to stop him from committing further crimes, but chose to release him from prison early. They had confidence in a faith-based program to completely change Michael's personality. As it turns out, the state's faith was misplaced. Those are my thoughts in the case of Lyric Cook and Elizabeth Collins. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.